Ah, hola.
Hola, how are you?
There we are. Hi.
How are we
Okay.
doing?
Ready for more?
Anytime.
Ah,
Where are we at?
I think we're on page 89.
Ooh,
That's my guess. Oh, this here.
Order stop, everybody.
Well, the stove.
Yeah, there's a whole thing about this permanent daylight savings time.
That's going to be messy.
Well, it's messy because of kids going to school when it's still dark, and
Yeah.
how you going to daven and all kinds of
Yeah,
things.
the first time put on fill-in on in October and November and December and January is going to be after 7 a.m.
Oh, that's great.
Very, very hard to put on fill-in before that.
Is a good pitching?
I could have just sent out a message. Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, but if it's going to be unanimous like it was, and the Senate could make it unanimous, you're not going to have a choice here.
Wow.
That's a good reason to move to Eretz Israel. See, you can pull
Yeah.
up a billion on time. They're going to cause aliyah.
Yeah. How do you get people who are working? It's like doesn't work.
Yeah, it's a problem. If they make normal time the whole year, so then it'll be a whole different ball game.
It'll be opposite.
Correct. It'll be normal.
What does Mandami want? Because that's what's going to win.
Mamdami wants you to understand that New York was started by Little Palestine.
But they daven five times a day.
Yeah. Does it affect
So
them?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
We are on page 89, wiping up spills. We're in the malach of malabing, laundering. Now that we better understand the considerations concerning the prohibition of laundering on Shabbos, we can discuss how to clean a spill on Shabbos. If a small quantity of liquid spills onto a counter or floor on Shabbos, one would be permitted to dry it with a towel or rag. The rabbinic prohibition surrounding wringing does not apply in cases involving only a small amount of liquid. And both the Ri and Rabbeinu Tam agree that the biblical prohibition does not apply either, since the towel or rag is clean, and using it to clean a spill will dirty it. But if it's a large quantity of liquid, ostensibly, the rabbinic prohibition would apply due to concern that one might wring out the towel. What should one do then to clean up a large spill on a surface of plastic, wood, or stone? To further the problem, even merely handling very wet fabrics on Shabbos is forbidden, due to the concern that one might wring them out. And the Ramah states this, Asr l'taltalam, a wet garment you shouldn't touch. Shema yavo l'dei schita. You might come to squeeze it. V'hu shemak b'dal meimav. And he's not happy that the garment is wet. So Rav Mordechai Eliyahu notes that a person may not lift a wet towel out of the sink on Shabbos. In kol hamagavot rutuva, if all the towels are wet, asur lo tzia min hakir, you can't take it out of the sink. Im chelik ma'amagevet yavesh, if some of the towel is dry, mutter laharim ota badinut u'lizar shelo yischon. You can grab it by the dry part and be careful not to squeeze it. One possible solution to the problem of cleaning a large spill might be to use multiple rags or towels to absorb a spill, so long as no single towel or rag absorbs enough water that there would be concern for wringing it out. Another solution is suggested by the Shmir Shabbos Kilchasa, who writes that the concern that a person may wring out fabrics is not applicable when others are likely to prevent the person from wringing out the fabric. Thus, two or more people may handle the wet fabrics or garments together, safely assuming that they will remind each other not to wring them out. V'daki muva b'siman shin aleph Magen Avram. It's brought in 301 Magen Avram. Dasar bnei adam mutar l'tatel gam shar b'gadim retuvim. 10 people can carry wet garments. They remind each other. It's not lav dafka 10, even 2. The Mishnah Berurah gives the third solution. The Mishnah Berurah rules that if someone does not mind leaving the fabric wet, it is permitted to use it to dry even a large quantity of water, since there's no concern that it will be wrung out, because you don't care that it's wet. If it's a garment that he doesn't care the fact that it's wet. Umenicho kamazmanim amayim. And the guy would leave the garment with the wet garment. He's not makbid on it. Lo gazrina shema yischop. Then there's no gzeira that you're going to wring it out because the guy doesn't care about it. Rav Mordechai Eliyahu, among others, rules that it's permitted to wipe up spills with paper napkins. Mutar l'nagev nozlim b'mapiot niyar. You can clean up spills with paper. Regilot mekevan shebederech klal adam mishtamish ben pamachas. These are one-time use and you throw them away. You don't wring it out. It's not practice to wring out a paper towel. You use it and throw it away. An additional consideration for leniency is presented by Tosfos. In the case of a colored and scented liquid, such as wine, Tosfos demonstrate that there's no prohibition and concern for wringing out the fabric. Although any actual wringing is forbidden, there's no rabbinic decree in place due to the fear that someone will wring the fabric.
Ernie, just to say with a paper towel, the problem with paper towels is sometimes you need to, pull the paper towel and it comes across. So how do you do that? You can't break it.
You're talking about like a napkin.
No, a roll in the
A roll.
Corporation.
The roll is a problem because you're going to tear.
Right.
But we're talking about
Even if it's perforated. I mean, is perforated considered tearing?
Yeah. We have that with toilet paper. We discussed that. So we're talking about like a napkin, a detached napkin, a napkin.
Yeah.
Not tearing anything. That kind of paper towel you could use. Aval gabiyai lo gazrina mishum schita. Tosfos says if a garment is wet with wine, there's no problem touching such a garment. Because we said there's a problem touching a garment because of a gzeira shema yischo. But by wine, kidomer perak toilin, besanin esayayin besudrin. They would filter wine by passing it through a shmata. People were not going. We weren't worried that they're going to squeeze such a garment. You can't get rid of the fragrance if you squeeze it out. And by squeezing it in a yachal and akuso berecho, you can't get rid of the smell and the way it looks. Chazuso. Nobody's going to wring out the garment to squeeze some wine out of there. You're not going to. You can't squeeze such a thing out. By squeezing it, you will be laundering a little bit. Or because you're separating, like when you squeeze olives and grapes. We said already that this whole sugya could be a tolda of dosh. So the Shulchan Aruch doesn't accept Tosfos' suggestion regarding wine, based on the Maram Mirattenberg, who's buried in worms. The Shulchan Aruch rules that one may not use a cloth to absorb wine. Also, nagiv koshay b'mayim o yayin b'mapa mishum dasilei diski. They are worried about schita. The Mishnah Berurah notes that wiping other liquids would be permitted, as there's no concern that one would wring out other liquids from a cloth. Moreover, he notes that many Achronim permit doing so even with wine. We're talking about like for drying a cup of its wetness. And he's saying even, other, not water, but orange juice or even wine, we're going to say. He says, B'simin Shin Yutes, B'simin Shamad Lamadala, Dasar Be'achronim, Daf B'yayin Lochosh. You can't, there's no problem with wine. Uvekos Tsar Yesh Lachmir, but if it's a narrow cup, you should be Machmir. Because just sticking it in to that narrow cup, you might come to wring it out. But otherwise, if it's got a fairly large opening, then that would be okay. These rulings pertain to using a dry fabric to absorb liquid. But as explained in the Hilchos Shabbos, it's forbidden to use a wet rag or towel for cleaning a table or floor. Because if it's wet to start with, you're going to be squeezing it out as you clean up things, right? As cleaning this manner involves squeezing liquid out of the rag or towel. So you got to stay away from a towel that's wet, right? Asur lishtamish b'matlis retuva. You can't use a wet towel. L'tzorch nikui hashulchan, to clean the table, or a ritzpa, or a floor. While you're cleaning, you're squeezing the fluid out of this towel. But you can start off with a dry towel for the purpose of absorbing liquid in it. Rav Ribiat, the author of the 39 Melachos, addresses another important point regarding the surface on which the liquid spills. If the spill occurs on a fabric tablecloth, then in addition to avoid wringing the item used to wipe the spill, one must prevent pressing on or wringing the tablecloth as well. So if a drink spilled on a tablecloth, one may gently place paper napkins over the wet area to absorb the surface liquid. But you may not press a dry cloth or paper napkin against the wet area to draw out the moisture, because this is an act of schita. The issues surrounding malacha related to wringing also shape the halacha regarding sponges and other specialized cleaning items. As explained by the Shmir Shabbos Kilchasa, a person may clean with a sponge made of loose rubber or other synthetics. I'm reading the footnote. The Shmir Shabbos Kilchasa writes that one may not use steel wool for a different reason because it polishes and smooths the metal, thus violating the malach of smoothing. According to the Ktsos HaShulchan, using steel wool violates wringing. Says the Shmir Shabbos, Mutter lishtamish lenikui kelim b'motzrim muchumar sinteti. You can use to wipe up material made out of synthetic material. Hamiyuchadim lekach, made specially for this. Lo mutzar svogi, as long as it's non-absorbent. Im zifei hamotzer mufradim zeh mizeh. The strands of the product are separate. Ve'enan tzfufim arbe, they're not bunched. Va'afilu kashem retuvim, even when it's wet. Osir laharti v'shabbat yontiv sfogo matlis. You cannot cause to become wet a sponge or a rag on Shabbos. V'osir lakos b'hem kelim kashem retuvim. You don't want to use them to clean a wet kli. Even if the sponge or rag is in a bowl full of water, you're going to squeeze stuff out of it. Even when they're in the water. You still might squeeze some water out of it, even when it's wet. So Rav Simcha Bunim Kohn summarizes some of the options available to one who wishes to clean up a spill on a non-porous surface. The prohibition of saturating does not apply to towels, rags, or paper towels, which people generally do not mind leaving saturated. It does not apply to saturating fabric with a liquid that will soil it badly and require washing, such as filthy or odorous water and colored juice. The prohibition also does not apply to merely moistening a clean fabric or saturating an insignificant part of it. Practically speaking, the prohibition of saturating fabric is relevant when cleaning up spilled liquids. Based on the guidelines set forth above, the following rules apply. If a small amount of liquid spilled, one is permitted to blot it even with a garment, provided the garment will not become thoroughly saturated. If a large amount of clear liquid spilled, one is forbidden to blot it even with a garment, but may use a towel, rag, or paper towel. We have seen that the Shmir Shabbos Kilchasa rules that ringing does not apply to a sponge of loosely set synthetic material. In accordance with this ruling, a number of sponges have been marketed in recent years for use on Shabbos. Rav David Rivedi explains how to determine whether any particular sponge is excluded from concerns regarding the prohibition. One can easily test a brush or plastic pad by immersing it in water before Shabbos and observing whether water drains out readily as it is removed. If the water drains out quickly, using the brush or pad is permitted. One need not be concerned about residual droplets that cling naturally to the bristles and fibers. That's not a sign of absorption, but is merely characteristic of what occurs to wet glass or any wet non-absorbent surface due to surface tension. See an example of such a test performed on a Scrub Daddy sponge available at this whatever. Many of the Shabbos sponge brands on the market in both Israel and the United States have the endorsement of recognized poskim. However, other poskim of prominent stature have suggested that from their testing, some of these brands retain water in them that appears to be absorbed. They claim that such sponges would have the status of hair, concerning which ringing is forbidden midrabanan. So you can see that Somet Institute endorsed Shabbos sponge, wiping up a spill on a counter with paper towel. Okay. Baby wipes, page 95. As discussed by contemporary poskim, another important question surrounding the prohibition of ringing involves the use of wet wipes for a baby or other cleaning purposes. Would using these wipes on Shabbos violate either a biblical or rabbinic prohibition? We have seen that there's a rabbinic prohibition to wet fabrics, or even to handle very wet fabrics, which you would come to be tempted to wring out so as to clean or dry them. One might argue that this does not apply to these wipes because one is not actively getting them wet, and people do not wring them out in order to clean or dry them. Regarding the more serious problem of biblical wringing, on the other hand, it might constitute the malacha to squeeze liquid from the wipes. On the other hand, malabin is usually understood to apply only to wringing or squeezing out a garment or fabric when one wishes to clean that fabric. If so, in this case, it would not be considered the malacha since one is not trying to clean the wipe. You're cleaning the baby. And Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank spells this out explicitly. And other poskim agree, such as Rav Moshe Feinstein, Rav Shmuel Vosner, Rav Nissim Karelitz. The aim is mishum malabe. Using a baby wipe, you have no issue of malabe. The problem of wringing is at the time of cleaning, you're going to wring out the garment. You are causing this wipe to become dirty. How can we say that using this will come to schita? Because you're wiping the wipe or cleaning the wipe. All you're doing is dirtying the wipe and throwing it away. However, it may violate the tolda of wringing associated with dash, which generally refers to wringing in cases in which one desires the liquid extracted for some purpose, which would seem to be the case here. I don't understand why anybody would desire this liquid. Many poskim, such as Rav David Rivedi, take the stringent view regarding this issue. He argues that one squeezes the wipe so that the moisture absorbed inside it emerges, and is used to clean a baby or other item. This, he explains, constitutes wringing on a derisive level and should be forbidden. Thus, he says that if one needs to clean a baby, it is better simply to pour water rather than use a moist wipe. One should not use pre-wetted wipes on Shabbos to clean a child during diapering, because their use involves schita. The consumer is expected to extract the absorbed liquid solution while wiping the cloth on the baby's skin. Because the wiping action is meant to extract and absorb liquid, it must be classified as an act of mafarek, which is forbidden. Certain major poskim are quoted to have permitted the use of pre-wetted wipes on Shabbos and Yom Tov. The explanation given for this view is that most of the moisture of these clothes is not absorbed within the fibers, but is merely settled upon the surface of the cloth. Even according to this lenient ruling, pressure and vigorous wiping should be avoided during use, so as to avoid an inevitable act of genuine schita of the fluid that is actually absorbed. In various interviews with representatives of major U.S. manufacturers of pre-wetted cloths, this author received conflicting reports on the nature of the materials used in the wipes. In light of the uncertainties regarding the question of pre-wetted cloths, one is best advised where possible to avoid using them on Shabbos or Yom Tov. One should simply use tissues and water, baby oil, or thin lotions for diapering a baby on Shabbos. The Hilchos Shabbos takes a similar position and cautions against the use of wipes. Also, l'ishtamesh b'mamchatot. These are, I guess, moist wipes, lachut, moist, amanat lakot tinok, to clean a baby, olamatara acher mishum isra schita. You shouldn't use a pre-wetted wipe for any purpose. Some poskim, such as Rovadia Yosef, differentiate between whether one wipes gently, so as to avoid bringing out moisture, and wiping normally. Magvunim lachim, moist wipes, shasul nagev lekanech tinokot, that are made to clean and dry babies after achar asiyat tzarchehem. Mutar lishtamish b'hem gam b'Shabbos Yom Tov. He allows use. Ela sheyesh lizrar lenagev b'nachas. You should wipe gently. V'lo lidchok hamagvonim b'chazaka, not to squeeze it hard, mishum isra schita. And the Shmir Shabbos Kilchasa appears to take a similar approach. In the case of paper wipes, period. But he forbids even gentle wiping with cloth wipes. There's really reason to be lenient in cleaning a baby. Olana gave us a panim, or to wipe your face, or yadayim, bimam chatot lachot, with moist wipes. He qualifies elo asus miniyar v'lo mibat, as long as they're made of paper, not cloth. Uvad shlo yischot b'yadayim es amam chata. You got to come to be sure not to squeeze it. Vaf lo yikanech b'chozeh. You shouldn't wipe hard. He azma say lo yischot anozlim. Therefore, it won't cause the liquid to come out. V'lachein ein b'zeh mishum isra schita. Other poskim more readily permit using baby wipes. Rav Baruch Moskowitz, close student of Rav David Feinstein, reports that Rav Moshe Feinstein also held that one may use baby wipes on Shabbos. V'chei nahag hamishpacha, the family of Rav Moshe, le'inyan niyar, u'le'in magvunei niyar, l'tirokom, baby wipes, paper. Kol yamav delekach shash, im lo demechavim mamish lo tzihar tivud, as long he didn't have kavana to get the liquid out of there. Rav Asher Weiss explains at length why baby wipes may be used normally, so long as one does not rub vigorously or specifically act to squeeze the moisture out of them. Let's look at footnote 32 first. Rav Yeshua Neuwirth, the author of the Shmir Shabbos Kilchasa, writes in the footnote that Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach also permitted using wipes in this manner on Shabbos, meaning not squeezing it hard. However, controversy has erupted over whether Rav Shlomo Zalman may have retracted his lenient ruling towards the end of his life. Rav Yitzchak Rubin, author of Hilchos Shabbos, insists that he showed Rav Shlomo Zalman wipes, and Rav Shlomo Zalman told him that in truth, using wipes should be forbidden. On the other hand, some family members, as well as Rav Asher Weiss, claim that reliable sources informed them that Rav Shlomo Zalman continued to rule leniently even at the very end of his life. Back to Rav Asher Weiss on page 97. Ula aniyut dati, in my humble opinion, halacha commissioner rishona. The halacha is like the lenient ruling. The dikot rabot she'arachti, He conducted extensive testing. Hereti Ladat, he has shown that with regular usage of these baby wipes, that there's no schita. Veini karev del klal bekamut hanozlim hamufrashot min hamakbon beniguv kal leniguv ragil. He doesn't see any difference in the fluid coming out of the wipe, whether you did it gently or regular. After niguv nasa bepalat lachatz mitzuyam. I mean, there's some pressure that you're using with the wipe. Sibata devari mishum shemagvonim ele. These wipes, he says these wipes have the fluid on their surface. They're not absorbed within it. The whole purpose. The purpose is to release a small amount of liquid onto the skin. And the whole point is a small amount so it can evaporate on its own. You don't have to towel the baby down. If the baby remains wet, so it could lead to irritation and infection. The whole point is to avoid that. Therefore, they create these wipes so that it has very little absorption in the wipe itself. They're sitting on the surface. And if they were more absorptive, there would be a lot of liquid in there. And then after you clean the baby, you'd have to towel the baby down because you wouldn't want to leave the baby wet. It was explained to him with the owner of a factory that's producing this. He ensures that the thing that they use for the wipe is non-absorbent. They don't want it to swell or disintegrate. He did testing, and even if you fold one of these wipes in your hand and squeeze it, but he did, when you fold it and squeeze it, there is a schita going on. If you fold it multiple times. And if you rub it against the skin of the baby, as if you use them with very light wiping, like a dirty child, he says, right, if you do something without kavanah, your kavanah is not that the fluid should come out. Your kavanah is to clean the baby. But we know there's constant, that's a davar shem iskavin. We pass like Reb Shimon that it's potter. It's permitted. However, if it's a psik reisha, means it's automatically going to happen. So he experimented and he saw that it doesn't automatically happen. So it's not a problem of davar shem iskavin with a psik reisha. L'chein pashut l'nias daiti. Dein adam iskaven l'schita. When you're cleaning a baby, your kavanah is not to squeeze. Sharei ein lo inyan b'kamuk gdola shenozlim. He's not interested in a lot of fluid coming out. Sharei ein rotzana gave it a tinuk. He doesn't want to towel down the baby afterwards. B'magevet la'achar mikein. V'asibashu m'nagev b'lachatz mesuyam enek de lafrish nozel. The reason he's using a certain pressure when he uses the baby wipe is not to get more liquid out. He wants to clean the baby through the wiping. He says we should be lenient for two reasons. Karov levadei she'en kan schita klal. It's close to absolute that there's no real schita. Afim yesh kan schita dover she'en miskavinu. Even if there is schita, he's not wanting it. V'gam psik reisha ein kan. V'ra'iti Hilchos Shabbos sham shekosov shnisbar de bedika meda'id. They found through scientific testing shel mumchim sheyesh schita b'magvanim ela. There is fluid that comes out, and you're violating schita. Umemela v'psik reisha. So it is a psik reisha. V'nei kvar bi'arti pamim rabot. He explained many times. Shelanias taiti ein dinei haTorah bichlal v'Hilchos Shabbos bifrat. He says the laws of Torah is not a klal, with the Hilchos Shabbos being a prat. Nikbaim ha'yedei ha'mivchan ha'madai. It's not based on scientific testing. It's through human observation, and the way humans deal with it. Although barur, kashemesh, it's like the sun. Scientifically, even with small amount of pressure, you're always going to get some squeezing out. You don't see it. The liquid released is not important for people. Much like Rav Weiss, Rav Yosef Tzvi Rimon also permits using baby wipes normally on Shabbos, though he recommends wiping gently to ensure that no schita takes place. Hashimush b'magvonim alul liyot bayati b'Shabbos. He says using wipes might be a problem. Magvun, pressing the wipe, the problem is some fluid comes out. B'gvmora Shabbos kuf yud gimel muvar shadam tzarich lizayer shelo lavod b'emes hamayim. He takes us back to the sugi in the Gemara that you shouldn't wade through a river. When you come out of the river, you're going to squeeze your clothes to get rid of the water. The Gemara doesn't exactly explain what's involved. Rabbeinu Tam b'Sefer HaYashar kotev sheyeshnam shnei tzurim b'schitas pkadim. There's two problems. Soichet mishum leches mlaben. One is laundering. The soichet mishum leches dash, threshing. Schita mishum mlaben asur kasher hamatarai nikayon habeged hanischad. You're not allowed to wring out something if the point of doing it is to clean the garment. If you want to capture fluid that's absorbed in something, and that's why you're squeezing it out, that's dash. Regarding wipes, you're not trying to launder this wipe. The point is not cleaning the wipe, it's cleaning the child. So then he goes to the next problem, is there a problem with dash? There's absolute certainty that some liquid will come out if you squeeze it. The person using the wipe wants to use this fluid. Those that are machmir, they have chashash isur Torah b'shimush b'magvanim b'Shabbos. He quotes the Hilchos Shabbos, the Shevet HaLevi. Ulam l'maisa nira sheyesh svarot tovot latir. He will explain why to be lenient. Whatever he wrote now, more במקרה שמשתמשים במגבון בכוח. This is when you squeeze hard. לכן יש ודאות שיצא ממנו נוזל. אולם כאשר אדם מנגב בנחת, if you do it lightly, רוב הסיכויים, the majority of the cases, שלא יצא נוזל כלל מבפנים. The fluid won't come out. ואם כך, גם אם בפועל יצא נוזל מהמגבון. So if in actuality some fluid comes out, אין כאן פסיק רשע. It's not for sure that it's going to come out. אבל דבר שאין מסכוון. ודבר זה מותר לכתחילה. ואומנם ישנם סוגים שונים של מגבונים. There are different kinds of wipes. אבל כיום רוב המגבונים, בוודאי בחברות הטובות, the good companies, עשויים באופן שמגבון איננו ספוג כולו בנוזל. They're made non-absorbent. ולא יסחט בשימוש רגיל. Therefore, you won't be over סחיטה with normal use. ולכן אין ודאות שתהיה סחיטה. There's no for sure that it'll be סחיטה. אם יש מגבון בסוף החבילה, if at the end of the package, there's a wipe that's very moist, שהוא רטוב מאוד, והשימוש בו ודאי יביא לסחיטה, לא ישתמשו בו, then that you shouldn't use. למעשה מסתבר, שגם חלק גדול מן הפוסקים שאסרו, he says it's logical that even those of the poskim that prohibited, היו מתירים אם היו רואים את המגבונים כיום. They would permit if they saw today's wipes. שבדרך כלל לא נסחט מהם נוזל פנימי. Because in general there's no fluid that comes out of them. ואף אם נסחט אין בו צורך כלל. You're not really using it. ואף מעדיפים בהיעדרו. You actually prefer that it not be wet, because you don't want the child's to have to be wet. וכן הורה להתר הגאון שלמה זלמן אוירבך. וכן הורה להתר הגאון הרב אושר וייס. לכן נראה העיקר לדינה, שמותר להשתמש בשבס במגבונים לחים. You can use wipes עבור תינוק. אחרי שנגב בנחת, you should do gently. אך עניין להשתמש דווקא במגבונים כמעט יבשים, and it's not that you should use this a real dry one, אלא אדרבה, עדיף עם מגבונים טובים. You should use good wipes. רגילים שיש בהם לחוץ מספיקה למגבון. גם בשימוש דחס. You want there to be enough fluid, so when you wipe gently, it'll work. ולא נויקחו מגבונים הסוגים מאוד בנוזלים. Don't buy the ones that are very wet. עד כדי כך שכשהם הרימו אותם ממש נוטפים מהם מים. When you pick them up, you see there's dripping water. דבר שלעיתים רחוקות קורה בסוף החבילה, that sometimes you'll find at the end of the package. Okay. I'm going to stop here today. We'll finish a little bit more laundering next week. And then we will start Tofer v'Korea, sewing. Any comment, question?
So in the end, we were talking about baby wipes, but a very popular usage is flushable wipes that people use.
Is that different than a baby wipe? What is that?
Well, from my experience, in baby wipes tend to be, from what I say, a lot more moist.
Wetter, definitely.
Yeah.
Then what are you comparing it? What wipe are you comparing it to?
Dude wipes.
Yeah, I think the question here is personal hygiene versus cleaning a baby.
I see.
And I know, for example, we've seen leniences when it comes to personal hygiene. Like, for example, if you're in a bathroom, we know if you're in a bathroom, I remember years ago, we had a Kashmir, best you're in a bathroom on Shabbos, and there's the only paper there is toilet paper on a roll that you could with a chinoy, because you're not interested in the tearing because you're trying to create something. You just want a piece of paper for hygiene. And so there was a leniency to even tear the toilet paper at that point because you had no choice. So I don't know if there would be similar type of.
If the dude wipe is not moist, then there's no problem.
Yeah,
Because
I mean, it is a little moist.
usually are a
no,
little
but
bit
you're saying it's less moist than a baby wipe.
Yeah.
And we've heard tonight that even the baby wipe is considered, as long as you don't press hard,
Yeah.
is permitted according to
Yeah,
Rav
but
Weiss and Rav-
maybe a baby wipe that they're talking about is because for a baby, you need that. For an adult, you don't. They never talked about wipes over here. You know.
Well, you heard Rav Weiss say that even for the baby, you don't want it to be too wet because then you'll have to, the whole point of it is not to have to towel the baby down with a towel. And you don't want to leave the baby wet because it can lead to redness. So, I mean, I actually thought Rav Asher Weiss explained it very well. I think his approach was it was very similar to Rav Rimon was basically following Rav Weiss. Okay. I think it was a illuminating discussion.
It's a very clean sugya. Thank you.
Very clean, very clean. So yeah.
All right, shkoyach.
Shkoyach.
Right. Good night.